staff at the bank, of course, they are now able to identify as men or women using their, your lanyard thing. And it's double-sided. This is to allow them, the non-binary folk out there, to alternate between their different genders, whether or not they feel more masculine today or more feminine today. Some people are saying this is workplace progress. I personally think this is workplaces going mad. And some people out there might watch this and go, oh, shut up, Michelle, what are you going on about lanyards for? The reason I'm going on about lanyards, Martin, is because I feel, and I feel it so strongly, that there is something bizarre going on in this country. And I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know who's responsible for it, but it certainly feels like an orchestrated movement where they are trying to impress this gender ideology onto society and to try and force society to re-engineer itself to adopt this kind of what I would call fantasy. And the worrying bit for me is the way it's getting infiltrated into schools, and kids seem to be taught, oh, you know what, if you're a guy but you think you want to be a girl, don't worry about it, you can medically transition and all the rest of it. So for me, it's not about a harmless lanyard, it's about the direction of travel that no one seems to be blinking an eye at.
I think you've absolutely nailed it. And on the one hand, we can all roll our eyes, here we go, the more trans madness, repeat, part 25,000. The idea that you can just go to work and decide you're a woman that day is absurd. But I'm afraid we are at a point now where facts and science, for the first time in hundreds of years, are now once again being replaced by ideology, by religion, by feelings and by fantasy. And you are right. The idea that men can just go into women's spaces is misogyny. Something has fundamentally been lost around women's rights and protecting women and protecting children from predatory men. Not all men are predatory who transition, but some are. We must admit that. Look what happened in Scotland with the double rapist who blew apart the SNP's entire self-recognition bill around the simple truth that a man identified as a woman and went on to rape two women. Now, so long as that can happen, there can be no ifs or buts. And this idea that if you stand against this, you're a bigot, that you're the dangerous one, the world has lost its mind. We must protect women, we must protect children, and we must call out nonsense. Now, this is an emperor's new clothes moment, and I would urge everyone, particularly men need to get involved and stick up for women as well, because it's been too long, it's been a lonely wicket for feminists fighting against the trans movement, and it's, I think, designed to erase women.
Strong words. Aaron?
With this story in particular, I suppose I would just ask Martin, who's it hurting? So with the point about trans women in prisons, you've got a really important debate there, right? And you've got competing interests, competing demands. Well, teaching children in school about gender dysphoria or just sex in general, of course there should be a public debate about what age you would start teaching children certain things, or should certain things be taught in schools and so on. That's an entirely legitimate public debate, and people can have very different views on that, and that's just the way the world works. But on something like this, I'm not non-binary. I can't understand how a non-binary person thinks, just like I can't understand how a 60-year-old black woman thinks. We're different beings. We relate to the world differently because of how society functions, in many ways, not always. And I just don't really know who this hurts. And so I think to compare this to some of the other things you mentioned, it seems... No, it seems gratuitous.
It's all part of the same spectrum.
But who's it hurting?
It's a short leap from somebody wearing a badge saying, I'm a woman today, and a customer, for example, getting it wrong and being chastised. And then we're into the realms of compelled speech. You must call me woman today. Well, why? I refuse to go along with your fantasy. We're allowed to say that. Now, people are free to live their lives however they want. I don't care what they do in the private or in their bedrooms. The vast majority of Brits don't care either. What we do care about is being told that we have to go along with this fantasy. And if we don't, we're the bigots.
But that's not the story. That's a plausible scenario you just identified, but they're not saying that's,
Right, why is this necessary?
Well, I'm not a non-binary person. I don't know, but I just don't understand. There's lots of civil liberties issues where we do things, and we do them because nobody's being hurt, and a small group of society says, I would quite like this. So I don't... If this was hurting people, I can entirely see Martin's point.
It's a Stonewall initiative, right? Because they all want to be part of Stonewall's top 100 equality club, because that makes them look virtuous. And it's a great way of woke-washing their credentials as brutal capitalists. That's what banks do. That's what big tech does. That's what big corporations do. They want to appear virtuous, but really they're brutal capitalistic machines. And Stonewall has, we know, been insidious in schools and aiding the transition of children in private. The Tavistock Clinic has been shut down for this precise reason. Stonewall had their fingerprints all over that. Why are we backing this dangerous movement by saying, hey, let's wear a lanyard or
how is this dangerous? I mean, I think you do need to take things on a case-by-case basis, surely.
It's a Stonewall initiative. It's part of the same movement.
So it's dangerous precisely because Stonewall have backed it, rather than you're not taking this case on its merits? Because I just don't see this as dangerous. You can see it's a bit daft or disagree or support it, but I don't see it as dangerous.
Why are public organisations such as the NHS, central government and private institutions like this, why are they pandering to this fantasy belief system of trans ideology? It's a belief system. It's not based on reality. And it is insidious because if we don't go along with it, we can get cancelled, we can lose our jobs. That's true. It does happen. Children are being taught this stuff in silence. My son comes home to me, he's 14. There are trans people in his class who never even thought about doing that until they were taught about it.
But Martin, you're talking about all these other things except for this story, which I think sort of confirms my point. This isn't really hurting anyone. I think you do need to...
See, you know what? You can pick any one aspect of this and you can look at it in isolation. So you can say, right, Michelle, what is a double-sided pronoun badge doing to hurt someone? And the answer to that, unless you're a bit dim, is you're going to go, well, in isolation, that thing, it's just a name badge, right? But this is not what this is. This is not an isolated incident of some corporate entity deciding to do a double-sided name badge with he, she, whatever it is today that they feel like. This is part of a collective movement that is literally, I would say, infesting every aspect of society, whether it's corporations, whether it's schools, workplaces, you name it. There is no need to declare your sexuality or your gender on your badge. Just have your face and have your name. That will do. But it's not enough. And the reason it's not enough is because people are absolutely desperate to get up the backsides of Stonewall to get a credit so that they can high-five themselves and feel like they are forward-thinking. And it's not. It is an ideology that's dangerous. And NatWest, by the way, if you care so much about gender, you might want to look in the mirror and ask yourself why you have got a 31.8% gender pay gap between your men and your women. And on those days where women perhaps decide to get their lanyard and turn it round and pretend that they're a guy, maybe pay them like they are one as well. How about that? Right, I'll get off my soapbox, guys.